Hello, today we're going to be talking about the skeletal system part 1. We're mostly a bag of bones, and our skeletal system is known as an endoskeleton because it's on the inside instead of on the outside. Many bugs, such as cockroaches, have an exoskeleton, and that's why their skeletal system's on the outside, and you hear that crunch when you squish them. But since ours is on the inside, it's an endoskeleton. It is composed of two main portions, the axial, which again is going to be our head, our vertebrae, and our rib cage, and our appendicular, which is going to be our upper and lower limbs. It is composed of calcium phosphate and several other minerals, and it has a bony matrix and osteocytes, which are the bone cells. Bones are hard and inflexible, but we use cartilage, which is a rubbery, flexible material, to help them be able to move, so that we can have flexibility, padding, and keep them in place. There are 5 functions for bones. First, we have protection. Protection of all of our squishy organs, such as our eyes, our ears, our brains, our heart, our lungs, etc., etc. So we have the skull, which protects our eyes, ears, and brain, our rib cage and our pectoral girdle, which is going to be our shoulder, which is going to be our scapula, which is our shoulder blade, and our clavicle, which is right here. And it protects the heart and lungs. Our pelvic girdle protects our reproductive organs and our abdomen. Now, you've heard me use the word girdle twice. And girdle is a set of bones that encircle the body, and they have limbs attached to them. So again, we have our shoulder or pectoral girdle that has our arm attached to it, and we have our pelvic girdle, which is going to be our pelvis, that has our legs attached to it. We use support. The skeletal system gives us support to be able to hold ourselves up like a tree trunk. We have blood cell production. Hematopoiesis. Again, hematopoiesis. Hemato is talking about blood, and hematopoiesis is talking about our blood creation. Now, it's going to be created in the bone marrow, which is in the inside portion of our bones. And we have 2 types of bone marrow that we can have. We can have red bone marrow, which gives us our red blood cells, our white blood cells, and our platelets. So the red marrow mostly gives us what we think of as blood. We also have another type of marrow, which is called yellow marrow, which gives us our fats. Storage of minerals. Bone tissue is mostly collagen and mineral salts, such as calcium salts and magnesium, sodium, potassium, and carbonate ions. Now, these salts allow the bones to be hard and resistant to crushing. Leverage and movement. Again, our skeletal system is made up so that bones can work together in levers to help manipulate our actions, such as running, jumping, lifting, etc. They facilitate all movement of the body along with our muscles, so they work together with our muscles to create movement. And the positioning of these bones is critical for how we want our body to move. Storage of blood vessels and nerves. Bones are living tissue, so we do need to be able to bring nutrients to those osteocytes, those bone cells. So we have to have blood vessels to be able to run through, and we have nerves to be able to run through so that we can communicate from one portion of our body to another. Bone classification. There are 4 types: long bones, short bones, flat bones, and irregular bones. Long bones are much longer. They're mostly made up of compact or hard bone with spongy bone in the interior portion. We have most of the bones of our limbs, except for the patella, which is a short bone, our wrist bones, which are short bones, and our ankle bones, which are short bones. The short bones are cuboidal or boxy shaped. They are mostly spongy bone, and they are the wrist and ankles, and we have a special classification for our patella. It is known as the sesamoid bones. The sesamoid bones form within tendons, and they're sesame seed shaped, and this is going to be our patella or kneecap. Our flat bones are thin, flattened, and curved. They have 2 layers of thin, compact bone sandwiching spongy bone in between. This is going to be our skull, our ribs, and our sternum. Irregular bones don't have a normal shape. They're complex shape. They could be short, flat, notched, ridged, any of those. And these are mostly our vertebral bones and our pelvic bones. Now you have 206 bones in your body as adults. Again, we've got our axial portion, which is going to be our skull, our vertebral, and our rib cage. And then we have our appendicular, which is composed of the limbs and the girdles. Now, when we talk about articulations, those are going to be the joints, so that we can articulate or have specific movement or specific motion. Again, we have our axial, which is skull, ribs, and vertebrae, and our appendicular, which is going to be our girdles and our limbs. Let's talk about the axial skeleton, and then we'll be done for the day. Our axial skeleton supports our head, neck, and trunk. It is composed of the skull, the hyoid bone, the ossicles, which are going to be those inner ear bones, the vertebral column, and the thoracic cage. The skull has three main portions: the cranium, the facial, and the ossicles. The cranium is over the brain, and since you know the parts of the brain already, this is going to be very easy. We have the frontal bone, which is over the frontal portion of the brain. We have two parietal bones, one on either side. We have one occipital, which is in the back, and then two temporal. Very easy. They are held together by immovable joints called sutures. Now, these immovable joints don't form right at birth. This is why sometimes we say the baby has a soft skull. It's because these joints are actually still fusing. So again, we have sutures right here and here. Again, frontal bone, parietal bone, we have one on either side. Occipital bone, and then temporal bone. Again, we have them on either side. The facial bones, maxillae, which is the max, which is the top portion of the jaw. The mandible, which is the lower portion of the jaw. The zygomatic bones, which are going to be our cheekbones. And then we have our nasal bones, form the nasal bridge. Again, the ossicles are going to be those inner portions of the ears, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. And then we have our hyoid bone, which is a floating bone in the larynx. It is right beneath the neck and lower jaw, and it helps support the tongue during swallowing. You have to be careful when you're roughhousing, by the way, during wrestling or anything, because if this hyoid bone is broken, it can cut off breathing and oxygen. Our vertebral column has 5 portions to it. We have the cervical, which is going to be the top portion, the thoracic, which is our main back, the lumbar, which is the lower back, L with L, the sacrum, and the coccyx. So our cervical, which is 1 through 7, are going to be our top portions of our spinal column, make up the neck, help us be able to move right, left, up, down. We have the thoracic, which is the TH through T19, because we use T's for thoracic, and those are where the ribs are connected. The lumbar are the lower portions, and that's going to be L20 through L24, supports most of our weight. And when you say that you've hurt your lumbar region, that's the lower back. And you do this a lot of times by lifting heavy objects with your back instead of your knees. Then we have the sacrum and the coccyx. Sacrum is the base of the column, vertebral column. And then we have the coccyx, which is our tailbone, which is our lowest portion, and it's easily broken. Beware if you're falling, because you can break your coccyx. Then it hurts to sit, and you typically have to sit on one of those donut-shaped pillows. Not fun. The thoracic cage is composed of 12 pairs of ribs and the sternum, and it protects the heart and lungs. Now the sternum is the breastbone, and the bottom of the breastbone is our xiphoid process. But you have to be careful because it can be easily broken and then can puncture the lungs or the heart. Now the ribs, we have 3 different types. We have true ribs that attach directly to our costal cartilage and then to the sternum. So it goes ribs, our cartilage to sternum. Then we have our false ribs. that do not attach directly to the sternum. These first false ribs attach to a longer piece of cartilage that then attaches to the costal cartilage and then to the sternum. Then we have our last two, which are pairs 11 and 12, which are our floating ribs that do not attach to the sternum at all. Let's take a look. Okay, so we have our true ribs that attach to the costal cartilage and straight to the sternum. Again, sternum, we have the bottom portion, which is our xiphoid process here. You have to be careful because it can break off very easily. We have our false ribs that attach to a longer piece of cartilage, then attach to the costal cartilage, then attach to the sternum. And finally, we have our floating ribs down here, 11 and 12, that do not attach to the sternum at all. Now, I want you to go back through and see if you can answer these 10 questions. See if your notes will actually help you answer these. You might want to be able to answer them. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod. And that's all I have for you today. See you later.